Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Got Rid of the Kyuubi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The next morning Naruto decided to go and get some food, so after getting ready in his new clothes he went to the grocery store and was able to buy enough food for 2 weeks at regular cost because the owner was busy checking the shipment coming in and the woman who was running the register did not recognize him. Thanking his luck, Naruto quickly got back and made some real food, and then after eating put his hands together in a seal and said, "Kijibunshin no jutsu," and fell to his knees panting as a solid Kijibunshin appeared, and Naruto looked up and started to smile as it went up in smoke, and he said, "Well, maybe I should not have killed the bastard. Nah, just have to work harder. I got it." A little bit later Naruto was found standing horizontally off of a tree 3 feet off the ground while he was facing the ground, punching and panting heavy as he was doing it. It was not the strain of the tree climbing exercise or the punching that was the problem. Naruto in his infinite wisdom decided to up his gravity weight he added to his body. Now instead of 2 times normal gravity he was at 3, and he was sweating because he was running out of energy fast, and the only thing keeping him from falling face first into the dirt was the fact he was not actually punching the ground but using it as a push-off point to keep him level, so his body was having to get the exercise a lot faster and think quicker. Finally, after an hour Naruto was nearly out of chakra, so he had no choice but to stop and hit the ground, busting open his nose. After resting for about 20 minutes Naruto got back to it and kept working like this the rest of the day and on into the night until he literally crawled into his bed that night. The next morning Naruto made breakfast and after eating found he could make 2 shadow clones, though they did not last long, but it was an improvement. 2 weeks later Naruto was busy making breakfast when he heard a knock at the door to his apartment. Naruto tensed and pulled out a kunai and hid it as he slowly walked toward the door and asked, "Who is it?" A voice from the other side of the door said, "It's me, Naruto. Open up." Naruto said, "If it's really you, old man, then answer a question for me that only you would know." The voice said, "All right." Naruto said, "What drawer do you hide the same book Inu reads in your office?" The person outside the door sweet dropped and a chuckle could be heard, and the voice said, "Third drawer on the left." Naruto unlocked his door and opened it and said, "Hello, old man, Inu, what brings you both here?" As he walked back toward the kitchen, throwing the kunai into the support beam for the pass-through window in the kitchen, making both men raise an eyebrow. The Hokage followed Naruto into the kitchen and was shocked by what he found and asked, "Naruto, how did you get all this food?" Naruto stiffened a moment and said, "Originally Maelstrom bought it all for me before he left, saying something about not like leaving owing a debt along with these new cloths. He said you would explain it to me when I got older what he meant, but he said it was not charity, since without me telling him whatever I told him to help was valuable." As he shut off the burner and carried the eggs over to the sausage and toast and set them in the plate before pouring a glass of milk and setting it on the table. Inu, who had been watching, asked, "When did you learn to cook, Naruto?" Naruto sat down and after a moment of silence he softly said, "I may eat ramen all the time, but that was only because I could not afford anything else. I have been so hungry at times I have found pictures of food and dreamed about eating them. I have memorized nearly every recipe card I ever read, and with a little practice I can make simple food pretty good." And the exact moment both men turned away in shame, Naruto quickly pulled his mask down and ate his 2 eggs and 2 pieces of sausage in basically one quick bite, pulling his mask back up and drinking his milk through his mask, making both men turn and look at Naruto, who was smiling behind his mask. Inu sweet dropped and asked, "Naruto, what's with the mask and why did you eat so fast?" Naruto said, "Well, I saw this guy one day wearing a mask like this and he was reading that same book you and the old man read, and some woman was mumbling about not seeing his face even when he ate and about being a pervert. I watched the guy all day to see if I could see his face and see what the big deal was and never could. When Maelstrom gave me a mask he told me that it filtered water, smoke, paint, and sand, and told me to try to practice eating without taking it off." Inu, who had his mask on, smiled behind his mask and said, "So what did you think about that guy, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Well, if I was to say I would say H is complicated. He seemed like he was trying to be lazy, but the moment I stepped on a twig he turned to my direction and soon went about his business, meaning that he was a ninja of skills, since I know Jenin would not have acted like that, so I say he was at least Chunin. The third who listened was amused by this and asked, was there anything else? Naruto put his finger to his chin and said, you say something? Making both men faceful before he said, yeah. I found out his name was Kakashi and that he has one of those eyes those creepy Team Uchiha have. I also learned that he had a teammate S on a mission while his other SD during the Kyuubi. He was the student of the Yondaime and that he has a summoning contract for dogs. Both men were wide-eyed and the third asked, how did you find all that out? Naruto said, well, the first thing I did was listen to that woman who called him a pervert and she called him Kakashi. When I was following him I found him looking at some stone with names on it and he said something to a guy named Obito and Rin, so after he left I went and looked those two names up and saw that Rin SD on the day I was born, so that meant Kyuubi. I saw Obito last name was Uchiha, so I saw one later that day when I lost Kakashi and asked him if he saw a guy named Kakashi and he said, what would a demon like you care about a eye-stealing bastard like him, and kicked me in the ribs before he walked out. Then a boy came over and said he was sorry for the way his clansman acted and that he was just mad because he did not like the idea of a non-Uchiha having the eye and that his teammate should not have gave it to him on that mission. After I got all that I pieced most of it together, but then I overheard some girl with weird marks talking about Kakashi with this weird look in her eye, and she said something about wishing she could have had a teacher-student three-way with Kakashi and the Yondaime and her as the other student, while her dog and Kakashi summon dog had a fling. What's a three-way? Making both men blink, remembering what was going on. Inu asked, did you happen to catch a name for that girl, Naruto? Naruto thought and said, yeah, I remember as she went into her family home someone screamed the name Chum, making Inu jump back like he was bitten. The Hokage said, well, I just wanted to come check on you, Naruto, and ask if you still want to be a ninja. Naruto jumped to his feet and said, sure thing, old man. I'm going to be Hokage after all, as he pumped his fist into the air. The Hokage smiled and said, well then I think you should know I have agreed to let you join the academy on Monday when it starts. Naruto stopped and turned and asked, question, old man, what restrictions are on the dress code for the academy? The Hokage raised an eyebrow and asked, what do you mean, Naruto? Naruto ran and got his hair rag and glasses and walked back with them on and said, I notice I don't get any glares when I dressed like this, so I thought I might make it my official wear until I get a headband. Personally I think it's because everyone in this town hates orange and that's why they call me demon. Inu was thinking, no, it's cause they can't tell it's you and that's not why. Naruto in his mind was thinking, and the award for the most talented actor in Konoha goes to Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. The third smiled and said, Naruto, I think that might actually be a good idea. In fact, I will write you a scroll to give if anyone tries to tell you to change your clothing, and thought, out of sight, out of mind, maybe if he disappears from normal view then people will reevaluate. Naruto smiles and said, anything I need to know or get before then? Inu said, just your books. Naruto eyes darkened a moment and said, okay, how do I get them? Neither of the adults had noticed his eyes change a moment and the Hokage said, I will have someone drop them by for you on Sunday. Naruto said, can I just run by your office and get them earlier than Sunday? I want to make a good impression on my teachers, so I thought I might work on reading ahead to be better when we cover it in class. The third thought and said, that's no problem, Naruto, but you have to be careful with them because you only get one set per student a year. Come by tomorrow and you can get them. Naruto nods and said, I will, old man. Thanks. The Hokage nods and said, well, be good, Naruto, and good luck at school, as he and Inu left. The moment they were gone, Naruto thought, now it's time to start, as he waited till they were completely gone before he left his apartment heading toward his training ground, as he came to call it. When he arrived there he had done as what had become his ritual and walked up the wall and over to the other side, and then once he got about 100 yards in looked around real quick before he put his hands in a seal and said, Kichibunshin no Jutsu, and then 25 Kichibunshins appeared and all grabbed a pair of leaves each and started to walk up and down the side of different trees, and after 100 times each they would rotate to a different tree for different texture to work with. The real Naruto walked over to a tree and started punching and kicking it before doing squats, sit-ups, push-ups, jumping jacks, and somersaults to get his body used to being flexible, with each going for 1 hour each with a 5-minute break in between each exercise. That went until noon, at which time Naruto dispelled his kibunshins and went to get something to eat. He normally would have went to get ramen, but since nobody knew him yet, he decided to go to a different place. Naruto arrived at Marty's dango stand and ordered his dango with some of his extra cash when he saw 2 people walk into the stand and sat down across from him at another table. He channeled chakra to his ears and listened in. Anko looked down and said, "I can't believe this crap. I got kicked off the mission because nobody wants to work with me." Kurenai said, "Listen Anko, people are jackasses, they do that make everyone look bad, and the way they treat you is a good example. If I was a chunin I would work with you, but sadly I'm just a new genin myself." Anko nods and said, "Yeah, the Hokage has told me that I might be able to work with Ibiki in interrogation to try and let me crack a few skulls." Kurenai chuckled and said, "Some things never change Anko." Anko sighed and said, "Only when I can relax. Normally I have to hide my emotions in check to keep from king some idiot who calls me a snake whore, but at least around you I can open up." Kurenai said, "I'm glad my old friend is back though." Anko smirked and said, "Old huh, I'm only 2 years your senior and you're only going to be 13 tomorrow." Kurenai groaned and said, "Don't remind me." Naruto, who was nearby listening in, waved the waiter over, and he came over and Naruto whispered in his ear and handed him some money as well as wrote something on a scroll that he handed, and the man nods, and a few minutes later he came back over and sat 2 plates of dango at the table where Anko and Kurenai were sitting, who both looked up, and Anko asked, "What this?" The man said, "A gentleman ordered these for you and paid for them, and also asked that I deliver this to you also," as he handed the scroll to the girls. Kurenai asked, "Who is this gentleman?" The man said, "I never seen him before, but he was sitting right over there a minute ago and he said his name was Maelstrom. Now I must be back to my duties," as he turned and walked away. Anko looked at the scroll in Kurenai's hand, who opened it and read, "Greetings Yuhi Kurenai and Mitarashi Anko. I know ninja are not supposed to take thanks for what they do, but since I happen to agree with Ms. Yuhi that the people in this village are nothing more than egotistical, perverted, idiotic sheeds who could not tell their left nut from their right unless they were holding both at the same time, I felt it was my duty to show that not everyone is as dim-witted as them. Here is free dango for the both of you, as well as a jutsu to help you on your way to help with either interrogation or information gathering. It is like what the Yamanka family does, but you have to physically touch the target's head and then you can see any and every memory you want, or if it's a willing person who is awake they can show you what they want you to see. My wife created this jutsu when I was away on a mission while she was pregnant with our son. She used it on me and I had to experience the joys of childbirth from my wife's point of view. Consider it an early birthday present as well as a thank you to both of you. Maelstrom. Minsweep. A rank nin out if gene. Rat. Bor. Tora. Tora. Hebi. 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 Both women looked at each other and burst out laughing, and Kurenai said, "That could not have just happened. Do you think this might be a real jutsu?" Anko said, "I don't know. What say we head to Ibiki office and find out?" Kurenai nods and said, "Yeah, let's go." Naruto smiled as he saw them leave from where he was sitting now. He got up and walked away to continue training. When Anko and Kurenai got to Ibiki office, he saw them and said, "Sir Anko, why are you here and why have you brought a genin into the interrogation unit?" Anko said, "Well, the funniest thing happened. A guy bought me and Kurenai a thing of dango and also had this scroll sent to us. Read it," pointing to the scroll. Ibiki raised an eyebrow and Kurenai handed it to him and he read it and blinked and said, "Interesting. So you want to test this on someone and see if it works?" Anko nods and Ibiki said, "All right, I got a guy ready to be ked anyways, so might as well use him." Kurenai asked, "What did he do?" Ibiki said, "Oh, well, he was taking a homemade bomb to someone's apartment when an ABNU and the Hokage just happened to be leaving that apartment earlier today. The Hokage was not amused. He actually looked twitchy about it." Kurenai sighed and said, "Let me guess. Blondie apartment." Ibiki looked at her and said, "Girl, you just impressed me." And yes, it was his apartment. Now let's see what this jutsu does, as he opened the door to a holding cell. The man looked up and said, "What the hell is the snake bee doing here?" Anko said, "Let me try it Ibiki, in case it is a trap." Ibiki nods and the man looks at them and said, "What the hell is she talking about?" Anko said, "Oh, just a little jutsu, by the way, sleep," as she chopped him in the end, knocking him out. She then started hand signs, and when she finishes her hands glow white and she touches his head, and suddenly she found herself surrounded by doors. She looked around and they all had the date on them, and she looked at the one for today and opened it. She watched as he got out of bed and got ready, and she raised an eyebrow as he walked out of his room into some kind of underground compound and walked down it, and she saw him enter an office and said, "I received word you wish to see me, Danzo-sama." Anko got wide-eyed as Danzo turned in his chair and said, "Yes, Natal, I want you to do something for me. It has come to my attention the Hokage plans to put Kushina Kid in the academy next week. We can't have him do that, because if he were to enter the academy I would lose all chances of getting him en route, and I can't have that. I want you to go and blow up his apartment, putting the fright in him while I spread word that it was all his doing, making people fear him more." Natal said, "What happens if this plan fails, sir? I mean, the Hokage did mess up the plan when you had Mike, the boy's mother, in the hospital." Danzo said, "It's simple. If it fails I will dissolve all knowledge of you and you are to act as a civilian trying to get revenge on the Kyuubi. If you're caught you will most likely be killed, but don't do anything to lead them back to me." Natal nods and said, "Yes, Danzo-sama," as he leaves. He then made the bomb and went to Naruto apartment. Anko stopped looking and walked back out and wondered, "How do I get out?" She then put her hands in a ram seal and channeled chakra, and she found herself in her body, and she blinked and Ibiki said, "Just some joke." Anko said, "Hell no, it worked. Get the Hokage and fast, he has got to see this." Ibiki asked, "What are you talking about?" Anko said, "Gaki here is root. Danzo ordered him to blow up the kid's apartment, and he also killed the kid's mother." Ibiki was wide-eyed, as was Kurenai, who had came with them, and Ibiki said, "Tell no one any of this until I return. Don't even leave this room." As he left is a swirl of leaves. Ibiki appeared in the Hokage office and saw him reading his book while two clones did paperwork, and he said, "You need to come with me now, sir." The third asked, "What is it, Ibiki?" Ibiki said, "That guy you and Kakashi caught, H is a member of Root, and Danzo ordered the operation. The guy is also responsible for the death of Naruto mother." The third was wide-eyed and asked, "How do you know this, Ibiki?" Ibiki said, "I will explain when we get to the others." The third asked, "Others?" Ibiki sighed and said, "I will explain when we get there." The third nods and walks over to Ibiki, and they both leave Shushin away and appear back in the room, and the third sees Kurenai and Anko standing there, and the man was tied to the chair, knocked out, and the third asked, "What's going on?" Ibiki retails everything about what happened, and then Anko told what she saw, and the third said, "Sir H is back, huh? I wonder why he gave you that jutsu." Kurenai and Anko both shrug, and Ibiki asked, "What do we do about this, sir?" The third said, "Well, since I don't know anything about this jutsu I can't use it as proof, though I wish I could, but I can have Inoiki do a mind sweep on him to test it, and if he comes up with the same thing then I can use it." Laughter could be heard, and everyone looked and saw the man awake, and he said, "I'm afraid you won't get your chance," as he bit down hard on one of his teeth and black liquid came out and went down his throat. Before anyone could say anything his head fell off his body, as his end had been blown off by some kind of chemical bomb. The third Hokage sighed and said, "I want all information on this listed as S-rank information, and no one is to say anything about it." Kurenai asked, "What about Naruto, should he know?" The third said, "No, it's best for him to believe his mother SD giving birth when I tell him the truth about his parents." Anko sighed and said, "I guess you're right, old man. Don't want the kid to do something stupid and get himself killed." Kurenai nods, and the third said, "Well, if that's all, let's go about our business. You should not be here, Kurenai." Kurenai nods and said, "Right, Hokage-sama," as she starts to leave with Anko guiding the way out. The rest of the time for the week flew by. The Hokage had given a discussion of Maelstrom to all Chunin and Higher Ninja because he wanted to have a word with him, but no one found him. Naruto continued training in the Forest of Death, and it seemed that he was nearly doubling his chakra reserves daily the way he was going, as well as his stamina and body had started to get better. Naruto walked into class the first day of school and took a seat. Several kids shot him a glance, but since it was everyone's first day they figured that it was usual. After about 30 minutes the academy teacher came in and Naruto sighed. Iruka did not become his class's teacher for another 2 years. The teacher said, "All right class, my name is Mr. Rogue, I am your teacher this first year. Please tell me your names starting with those on the front row here." And so it went until it got to Naruto, who said, "My name is Naruto." The teacher blinked and narrowed his eyes and asked, "Do you have a last name?" Naruto said, "No," in a bored tone. The teacher nods and said, "Well, all right, next student please," and so they went on down the list. The first day basically explained what they had to look forward to, and when class was over the teacher said, "Naruto, can I have a talk with you?" Naruto stopped and asked, "What is it, sensei?" Rogue said, "Well, I was just wondering why you hide your face." Naruto reached up and pulled his bottom mask down and said, "To keep from having fangirls." Showing flawless skin though with his hair covered and his sunglasses on, the teacher could not tell anything else, but since he did not see any whiskers he said, "Well, I understand that, Naruto. Have a good day." Naruto nods and pulls his mask up and said, "I won't pull it down again until I graduate, sir," as he left. The teacher thought, well, I guess the demon child did not start this year after all. Over the next 2 years Naruto had physically and mentally gotten stronger. Nobody had discovered that it was him hiding behind their mask. The council had asked the Hokage where Naruto was, and the Hokage states that Naruto is in the village and going to the academy, but the council is confused because they have checked the academy looking for him, the Hyuga looking for his chakra, since the demonic chakra always had been leaking into his system and was easy to spot. The Uchiha had looked for henges. The Inuzaku had on several occasions tried to find the scent of a fox and could not, so that. There was a kid named Naruto who had no last name and was considered an orphan like a lot of people in the classes, and they each have tested him from a distance with their bloodlines, but the Hokage had came to the school and told them to quit harassing the students. The Hokage had, of course, when he got the grades the first quarter, called Naruto into his office. Flashback. Naruto walked into the Hokage office and said, "Hey old man, what's up?" The Hokage looked at Naruto and asked, "Naruto, I just got the grades from the first quarter at the academy and I was wondering why you did not give your last name." Naruto said, "Well old man, you told me I was an orphan and you named me Uzumaki, so that means that it's not really my last name. I figured I might as well go by just Naruto until I either found out what my real name was by accident or until I became a ninja." The third winced to himself, thinking that Uzumaki may not have been his real last name, but it was a part of his name, and said, "Well, I wish you could have told me. People have been asking where you are." Naruto said, "You're not going to tell anyone, are you?" sounding a little scared. The third said, "I had thought to tell the council but have them not tell anyone." Naruto started to chuckle at this and said, "You're joking, right?" The third was confused and asked, "What do you mean, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Well, think about it, old man. I have heard people talking on the streets talking about some kind of S-class law in the village and that you had ordered the council not to tell anyone about the law, but if that is true then the council broke your orders, so what's to stop them now? What is that law anyways, old man?" The third had paled as he heard Naruto and said, "Well, I am afraid I can't tell you and you can't mention anything about it without getting in trouble, but I think you are right. I will keep that you're just not using your last name to myself." Naruto said, "Thanks old man. So, how am I doing?" The third looked at the paper and said, "You're actually in first place right now with top marks. The teacher had already said if you continued this he thinks you might be able for an advanced class." Naruto thought and said, "No, that's all right for now, old man. I like my eyes the way they are," making the third confused. The third asked, "What does you graduating early have to do with your eyes, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Well, I hear people talking about prodigies and they point out some kid named Itachi as one and said he graduated several years early but his eyes are so cold and emotionless. I seen a few others that I heard people talk and mention and they have the same eyes. I figured it's something that happens when you graduate too early. Besides, I got a couple of friends though they keep trying to see what's under my mask." The third sighed and was about to say something when the door to his office suddenly opened and Naruto, who had been about a few feet from the desk, was now behind where the door would open up at and cover, and the Hokage saw this and would have commented if he was not pissed at the moment as to who just burst into his office. Danzo was standing there with 2 of his men, one on each side, and the third said, "How dare you burst into my office like this, Danzo?" A voice from behind the door said, "I agree, can't you see the Hokage was in a meeting at the moment? making both men turn and see Maelstrom standing there with a big black cloak hanging off of his back that touched the ground, and he was only touching the wall with his shoulder blades. The Hokage raised an eyebrow and Danzo said, "Who the hell are you?" Maelstrom said, "It's common courtesy to give your name when asking others theirs," in a bored tone. Danzo said, "I don't ask, I order." Maelstrom ignored him and said, "So anyways Hokage-sama, the reason I came here is because I just got back to town and heard you wanted to see me." The Hokage said, "Yes, Danzo, what do you need?" Danzo smirked, thinking he was superior, until the Hokage said, "I have this important meeting with my friend here and you are wasting my time, so either you answer me now or I will have the council cut the funding to your route by half for wasting time and resources." Danzo's smirk fell and he said, "I came to inquire as to the location of the boy." The Hokage said, "H is in the village and going to the academy, now get out of my office." Danzo said, "I don't believe you." Naruto said, "Don't call Gigi a liar like that, you one-armed freak," making everyone turn and saw Naruto standing there in the door wearing his orange jumpsuit, which made the Hokage raise an eyebrow, and Danzo snarled and said, "How dare you talk to me like that?" Naruto said, "I call them like I see them. I bet you lost that arm chocking your chicken," making everyone but Danzo snicker, who became pissed but stormed out, and Naruto said, "Good riddance," as he closed the door as they left, and Naruto in orange went up in smoke, and Maelstrom stepped away from the wall showing Naruto and said, "Sorry about bursting in like I did, Hokage-sama, but when I was in the lobby and had seen Naruto through the crack in the door and looked like he did not want to be seen right now, so I snuck in and hid him behind my coat. I have never liked Danzo." The Hokage sighs and asked, "Naruto, why did you hide when they first arrived?" Naruto said, "I have spent enough time in this office to know when those doors are busted open like that it's going to be a yelling match, and I did not want to be involved." The Hokage nods and said, "Well, I guess that's all I have for you, Naruto, you can leave." Maelstrom said, "So what did you need to see me about, Hokage-sama?" as Naruto walked out and closed the door. As he was leaving, he noticed Danzo speaking to the two guards who came with him and channeled chakra into his ears, and heard him telling them to stay and gather information on that guy in the Hokage office. Naruto then left. The Hokage said, "Well, I was wanting more information on that jutsu you gave Anko and Kurenai." Maelstrom said, "Well, that's kind of hard. That was all I knew beside the fact that it works about the jutsu. As I said, my wife created it, and as I told you before, she was Ked." The third asked, "Why did you give it to them?" Maelstrom said, "Simple really, the jutsu is pretty much useless to me, and I heard that Anko lady said she was going to work with Ibiki, and almost everyone has heard about him, so I decided that she could have it to help her since she seemed sad and her friend was kind enough to cheer her up, so I though a simple jutsu and a free meal was the human thing to do," as he sat down looking bored. The Hokage sighs and said, "Well, please don't give any more to anyone, please, without my permission." Maelstrom said, "I will try." The Hokage nods and said, "So what are you doing back here, trying to get more money?" Maelstrom said, "Actually, I got that covered now, as my first book will be coming out in the next week or two. I was just coming by to tell you, so you might have Jiraiya check it out, as well as anyone else you might think would like to read an adult romance story. Surprisingly, the test copies are popular with females and males from what the editor said." The Hokage said, "I think I might check it out. What's it's going to be called?" Maelstrom said, "The Kitsune Hermit series." The Hokage blinked and asked, "Why that?" Maelstrom said, "It's the right choice for me as the author. People say I'm as crafty as a fox, and I sort of am a hermit." The third nods and said, "Well, how long will you be in the village?" Maelstrom said, "I've been gone since Naruto left the office," and he went up in smoke, shocking the third Hokage. End flashback. It was also during this time that the Uchiha M happened. Naruto just trained and ignored it. He had gotten friends in Kiba, Shino, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, and Hinata, and had gotten her to quit stuttering so much. However, because of his whole hidden face deal, it was him who had the fan club at school, not Sasuke, but the fangirls lose him thanks to shadow clones, though no one figured out he could do them yet. It was about middle way through the third year in the academy at the end of the day when Naruto walked up to Iruka and said, Excuse me, sensei." Iruka looked up and said, "Yes, Naruto, what is it?" Naruto said, I came to tell you I won't be here the rest of this month. I have something personal I have to deal with, but I should be back by the first week of next month. Iruka asked, what is it that you are needing out of class for Naruto? Naruto said, a friend of mine is having personal trouble and I promised her that I would come and help until she could get back on her feet. It very personal and I promised her I would not say, but she is someone important to me. Iruka asked, who is she? Naruto? Naruto said, her name Crimson. I can't back out and am going one way or another sensei, but I was wanting to let you know so you and the others won't have to worry. Iruka asked, do you need to tell your sponsor? Naruto said, I don't have one. I was one of the unlucky ones who was placed in an apartment from being too old and not being adopted. Iruka nods and said, right, tell you what. I will give you a test when you get back over the next 4 chapters in the text plus reviewing the henjin I won't count it against you. Naruto said, thanks Iruka sensei. I guess I better get going. Iruka shook hands with Naruto, who left in a hurry after that and went to his home. That was another thing no one had figured out. Naruto had moved out of his apartment and into a house he built in the woods south of the Forest of Death. When Naruto got to his house, he checked with his clones to make sure they had everything for this mission. After making sure he had everything, Naruto went to sleep. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.